can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Dr. Dave Jones, and you can check him out as misgood.com. And Dr. Dave, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. This is kind of, I don't know if it's an athlete series. I have an athlete series that I run and a agency series that I run. It's kind of like a mush between the two of them. So some of the top agencies I've had on, I had Jason Swank. It's a great episode. He talked about how he built his agency to 8 figures and sold it. And then he started a group helping agency owners, the group he wished he had. I had Todd Taskey on. Todd Taskey has a Second Bite podcast, but he helps pair agencies with private equity and helps sell agencies. And he's Second Bite because sometimes when they sell the private equity, they sell again. They get sometimes more on the second bite than they did on the first after selling. And then Kevin Hurrigan was a good one of Spinutech. He's had an agency since, I think it was 1995. So it was interesting to hear the evolution of the internet, business, and the agency world through a couple decades. And then on the athlete front, Kurt Angle. You'll relate to him, Dr. Dave, because I know you've got smashed in the face with pucks being next professional hockey player. He broke his neck. He won the gold medal with a broken neck.
Wow.
And it was, I can't imagine winning anything gold medal with a stubbed toe, let alone a broken neck. But incredible story of recovery. He was in WWE after that. And there's just so many more interesting, you could look athlete entrepreneurs on Inspired Insider. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. We do this in a few ways. Number one, we're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, accountability, and full execution production. Number two, we're an easy button for a company's gifting. So we make gifting and staying top of mind to clients, partners, prospects, and even staff simple, easy, and affordable. You just give us the list, addresses, and we'll do everything else as your brand on it. And, Dr. Dave, I don't like sending tchotchkes like mugs and pens. That's fine. I like getting food. So that's what we send to people. And so we kind of call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background to make it easy and stress-free for companies to build amazing relationships. Because that's the number one thing in my life. And I've done that over the past decade by profiling the people I admire in my podcast and sending them sweet treats in the mail. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email support@rise25.com. And shout out to iBrand Visual, who made this sign. I did pay them. They're not paying me to say that, but they help build your brand with custom signage. It could be interior or exterior. They have customers like the Ritz, Virgin, and many, many more to startups as well. But I'm excited to introduce Dr. Dave Jones. He's a former professional hockey player turned sport and performance psychology consultant, and he founded M is Good. It's one of the world's largest Christian marketing agencies. It's built on his R7 process for vision-centered communication. We'll talk about the R7 process and how that works. He's a doctorate in sport and performance psychology. He spent over 20 years coaching elite athletes from the NHL, NFL, and other professional sports through his mental toughness training, MTT system. And he's also the author of the book Vision Wins, 7 Strategies for Mental Toughness in Life and Sports. Also on thin ice, and by the time you listen to this, he'll probably have his 3rd one, maybe 4th or 5th one, who knows. But Dr. Dave, thanks for joining me.
What an honor to be here. Thank you.
I want to get into, we're going to talk about what gets in the way of peak performance, right? Because I talk about my daughter who's running across country, and I'm like, for all those people out there, whether it's business or in sports or whatever it is, it's mental, right? I mean, I'm trying to think of what mantras can she say, and she thinks I'm crazy, of course, like any teenage daughter thinks their dad's crazy, probably, I don't know, at least in my world. And so we will talk about those, but I do want to start off with M is Good, because I think it's kind of fascinating. Let's start off with the name and talk about M is Good and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I know there's lots of times in people's lives where they have vulnerable moments. And when I started what was originally called Marketing Ministries, so we rebranded in 2013 to be M is Good. But
So it's is
I,
it ministries and marketing? That's what M is, right?
well, it could be. So yeah,
Okay,
so
I
there's a
like it.
story there. So I started as Marketing Ministries, and it was really out of a prayer. I had just finished up playing hockey in Europe, in Germany, and I was working sales at a um, at a TV station selling Major League Baseball and whatnot, and calling on agencies. And I just didn't really like going in at 8 and taking out lunch and then leaving at 4, and it's just kind of like in a cubicle life. And I, not that I don't like going in early, I love going in early, but and so I just prayed a prayer right there at my desk. And I didn't hear an audible voice, but I heard, like, the Lord tell me to start an agency. And I was like, okay, what do I call it? And the words Marketing Ministries immediately came to my mind. And I was like, Marketing Ministries, that's got to be the dumbest name, like marketing, like two very common names put together, Marketing Ministries. So I didn't know what I was doing. I got a lawyer, and sure enough, it was available. And so from 2001 to about 2012, we really worked with churches, still work with churches today, but our focus was churches and ministries. And, just really the vertical of glorifying the Lord with your talents and your abilities, just a Christian focus. And then in 2013, we rebranded. And what I was trying to do when I rebranded was really follow this juxtaposed line in a name. Like, what's a Verizon? Nobody knows what a Verizon is. What's a BlackBerry? Or BlackBerry phones? Apple computer. What's an Apple? It's a fruit. No, it's a pretty large computer company. And so Geico, I know most people don't know this, but Geico stands for Government Employee Insurance Company, which is a gecko. They use a gecko to say Geico, or a pig, kind of. And so I was looking for like a juxtaposed name. And so at the time, my VP says, what about M is Good? And I was like, aren't we great? Why are we good? And somebody said, well, God is
That's a good
good.
point.
Right. So God is good. God is good all the time. So we are like, okay, M is good. And so we just kind of left it alone of what the M. I love the halo on the logo, and just kind of left it alone. Let M be whatever you want it to be. So it could be marketing, it could be ministries, it could be money, it could be whatever you want it to be. So just kind of leave it there. M is good.
Yeah, I love it. And you weren't always religious, okay?
No.
There was a point, actually, I'll let you talk about it a little bit. Your brother influenced you on
That's
that.
right. Yeah. So I came home. I was 16. We had just won the state championship. I got drunk on a screwdriver, vodka and orange juice. Me and a buddy went underneath this bridge and just drank. And it was a bad night. And my uncle had to come save me. And it was a mess. So the next day, it just so happened my brother came home from Moody Bible School and said, hey man, do you want to live a life like this? And I was just completely hungover, headache. And I'm like, no, man.
He hit you at a good time.
It hit me at a great time. It was definitely.
If it was under the bridge, you may have said something different, like in the midst of it, but afterwards, you're like, oh no, this is terrible.
Yeah. So I just confessed there, and that's, I want Jesus in my heart. And it really didn't, that seed really didn't take hold until I was about 20, 21 years old. So that's where I was kind of like challenging what the heck I was doing. And that really came when I got a slap shot in the face. It shattered my nose in 3 different directions, deviated septum, cut the nerves in my teeth or my mouth. I've been vulnerable in my life, and that was in K Wings Stadium, Kalamazoo, Michigan. And that's really where I just really like that. That was bad. So
Talk about the beginning of the agency, because those are
yeah.
it's a humble beginnings too, right? And maybe the evolution of the agency itself.
Yeah. So I when I prayed that prayer of like, what do I need to do in marketing ministries, I found myself looking at a count list of 30 different Christians on the TV station at the time. And so So I did my market research. I went to those 30 clients. I said, hey, I'm going to start a Christian agency. I'm going to call it Marketing Ministries. And they're all like, yeah, that's a great idea. We're with you, man. Like, let's go. And I'm like, all right, this is going to be easy. And so that was like in November. And then I eventually left my job in January. And the next day I went back to those 30 clients and I said, hey, I started it. Let's go. This was in February 2020, 2002. And they're like, what? What are you doing again? No, we're not with you, man. And so out of those 30, I think 3 who are still with me today and follow me. So that first year, we invoiced about $15,000 a year, making 15% agency commission. So I was crushing it. And then the second year, I think it went to 30,000. So it's year 2. Now, thankfully, we didn't have any kids. My wife had a good job at Duke. And so I just kept on grinding. I don't know, honestly, Dr. Jeremy, I don't know looking back on that time, like what I was thinking. I just know I was grinding and I knew there was a path. I didn't know. I was total faith, man. Like I just kept on going. No was a delayed yes. That's the way I looked at it. No, I just need to talk to the right person, right people, right organization. Third year, I think we did 35,000. Fourth year, it was like 200. Fifth year, it got to 800, and I was like, okay. So it took some time, and I wasn't working something else. I didn't have another job, part-time gig. I was working. I was grinding.
What were some of those inflection points that worked? Because obviously, even when you look at an athlete, right?
Yeah.
You go out on the ice, you score a goal, you do something. That was thousands of hours of practicing. And then obviously people just see that moment. Talk about the business piece. I don't know, people make thousands of cold calls and then to work. I don't know. What did you find was inflection point, like move the needle? Because there was some big, significant jumps there.
Yeah, I think looking back, it's a long time ago, but I think looking back, it's a great question actually to reflect on that. I think looking back, I've sort of bottled this saying now that I work in my life because I've really been trying to hone in my golf game, And so you don't rise to the level of your expectation, you fall to the level of your training. And so I just kind of knew that I was new and I needed to make calls and learn from my mistakes through what I was telling people and what I could deliver on. It wasn't like we had a whole bunch of clients and like didn't deliver on it. I just couldn't get clients. And I think somewhere along the line, I knew that I needed 3 things. I needed cash, clients, and credit, and I had none of them. And so 25 years later, we have lots of clients, not lots of cash, but cash, right? And lots of credit. And so and I try not to use that credit, but it's there. And so I just knew I was young and just had to keep going. And I needed to talk to the right people. And I kind of had this image of me walking down the stream and turning over rocks. And some rocks, there's just nothing there. And I just had to keep on going, keep on trucking. It's going to work. I just had this belief that it was going to work. I just didn't know when.
I'd love to hear the evolution of your services. What did you first start offering and then, how to progress from there?
So media buying was what we did. So there were pastors that preached on television still today on, what we now call legacy media, which is, the television stations. And so we were just media buyers, just a media buying agency, just brokering, the time on major TV stations. And then I really was blessed with having, I never, this is kind of interesting. I've never had a cash infusion of somebody investing in for a certain percentage of the company. I tried that direction. It didn't work. I know some people go that, hey, we got to get all this cash and then we'll build it. That was not me. I built the bridge as I was walking across it. That's my journey. And so, yeah, it was just media buying. And then in 2013, we pivoted to be a digital agency. And so we still do media buying. Influencers is really big now, last 4 or 5 years. So we do have a big influencer spend there for clients. But it became digital and consulting. And I also knew this is a good one. It's a good little one, that I wanted to be a apple farmer, not a potato farmer. Let me explain that. So I had this analogy explained to me to one of my mentors. It said, when you potato farm every season, you got to lay down potatoes and you got to pour lots of water and maybe you'll get potatoes, maybe. And every season you got to do that. But an apple farmer plants the tree and takes care of that area, allows the tree to grow. And once that tree grows, it gives you apples. Yeah, you got to spray every now and then, to keep the insects off it. But for the most part, you get apples. And so I knew I wanted to be an apple farmer, not a potato farmer. So let me keep going on that just for a second. So when you're graphic designing or doing video production, you're a potato farmer. You're only as good as your next gig. So I knew that I knew retainers were the path. So 6 months, a year, have the retainer be in a set of hours that they can afford over the 6-month period. So I have a 6-month runway of if they cancel, I can have time to fill it in. So I kind of knew that in the back of my mind. That's how I want to structure the agency.
What did you find the churches wanted? Do they want donations? Do they want more congregants? Like what were they coming to you for?
Exposure to their church, which there's a reason this won't be popular. There's a reason why I left marketing the church in 2010. Because I love the church. I love Jesus. I don't get that wrong here. I definitely do that, but there's ways to communicate the gospel and ways to duplicate that, what Jesus did. And so really COVID was a strong indicator of not being in the community long enough and giving up. And the church is still paying the price for that. So people have found to do community, but I would say in a large part, the church marketing side of things is to increase awareness that they're in the neighborhoods, that they're there, and there's a good place for them to worship. I think the deliverables are really hard. So every pastor is going to say, we have a great praise and worship. We have great teaching and preaching. We have a great children's ministry, and it's just not enough. It's just not enough because everybody says that. And so where I kind of got lost is in the creativity. The pastor wants to stand up in a parking lot and say, hey, I'm Pastor Jones, and we have a great church service, and it's from 9 to 11 on Sunday. Come worship with us. It's boring, and it doesn't work. And so the creativity side of what the church could do, they just fall short. They just don't want to go there. And this is, hopefully we get to this later in the podcast, but, this is where we enter in, gosh, you're pulling this out of me today. This is where we enter in the fear, lust, anger, pride. What holds you back? So a lot of times, not all the time, okay, but a lot of times the senior pastor just wants to hear himself talk. He's not interested in allowing the person who is seeking Christ to be the hero. The church wants to be the hero, whereas the person seeking Christ needs to be the hero and the church needs to be their guide. That path, they just don't understand. And so it just became very, very frustrating to market the church.
I mean, it's similar in business, right? You make the customer the hero, not the company, right? Very similar. I do want to get to the fear, lust, anger, pride. I'm so interested in how did you find the churches differentiate? Like, what were some of the interesting things they did to differentiate? Like you said, okay, they all have the children's service, they all have this. What were some creative ways, or did you find any how they did differentiate?
Yeah, I think over the years, there's definitely some ones that said, we want to be different. We want to try this. But at the end of the day, they don't. They don't. I would say that, we've gone into this, well, I'd say we're sort of coming out of it, but this sermon series market where, you're marketing the sermon series is kind of but it becomes a whole production thing, right? And I think that somewhat works. But even then, because everybody's doing the same thing, it's kind of like when two dogs meet. When two dogs meet, what happens? They sniff each other's butts. And so it just becomes everybody's doing the same thing. They're sniffing each other's butts, and it becomes commoditized messaging. So there's nothing different.
That needs to make a quote in your new book. Okay. I like that. That's funny. On the fear, lust, anger, pride.
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know if we should talk about, I know you worked with a lot of athletes, specifically NHL. How does that apply?
To me, in my mind, it's all about the same thing, and it's all about, my career has been in the church. I live in a Christian bubble. It's just been my space, and I've done really well with it. And I would say for me, it's all about peak performance. It's all about well done, good and faithful servant. Like you have run the race, and so what gets in the way of glorifying the Lord with your talents and your abilities? Like, what is that? And so I've kind of put in this acronym called FLAP. What I see gets in the way is your fear, your lust, your anger, and your pride. And so every sport has that, right? Every athlete runs into that. This Sunday for NFL football, just watch any football game and somebody's going to go low EI or low emotional intelligence. They're going to be about themselves. They're going to take a dumb penalty, right? It's that fear, lust, anger, pride is going to get in the way of what they could achieve. And they allow that to become their vision. And instead allow their emotion to become their vision, not let their vision be their vision. Does that make sense?
So then when you work with them, what are the things they're coming to you with? And then, maybe talk about the process a little bit.
Yeah. So most of the time, like tonight, I've got 4 meetings with some pretty strong athletes. And, we're going to talk about identity. How do you identify yourself? What emotion got in your way this past weekend? What is your vision of what you can point to in the future? So, I coach on this side of peaks and valleys. Like everything's not awesome all the time. I think that's real life. If you look at the way life works, your finances are awesome some months. Some years they're terrible. Some months are great. Your relationship with your wife or your significant other, some days are really bad, right? And some days are really good. The ocean goes in and out. So peaks and valleys. So when we're in a valley, we have this low emotional intelligence. Our fear, lust, anger, pride is leading us. So what tools? So I got my little toolbox behind me there. So that's my plan to win toolbox, which is my slogan for my mental toughness training. So what tools can we use when we're in the valley so that the valley isn't as long? Not saying you're not going to be in it. You're going to be in it. So like good thing about a valley is you're in a valley, you're going to go to a peak. Cool thing about a peak is you're on a peak, but the bad thing about a peak is you're going in a valley. And so what can we do to make the valleys a little bit less deep and a little less shorter? So that's where, athletes are talking to me about how do I manage that valley?
That could be, entrepreneurship is the same thing. Sports is the same thing. That could be within a minute, right? In both of those
Yeah.
respects, right? It could be like on one play and the next play, whatever sport it is, right? And same thing with entrepreneurship. One, you're flying high, and the next second, someone's like, "I'm canceling," right? And
Yeah.
so I'm trying.
I wouldn't say it's a minute. I've defined a moment as this. That's a moment. And any moment, it can change. Right? And so what emotion is driving me in that moment to be low emotional intelligence? And so am I aware of it? So I was doing this meeting with a college campus once, and I was talking about this, like, what's that moment where you're low EI and you don't know? Because that's the blind spot. And as I was talking about this, Dr. Jeremy, I was walking by this player in the locker room. So the whole locker room is filled, coaches, players, and this player burps, right? And I keep going. I'm like, that's strange, man. He's burping. And I keep going. He burps again. And then he burps again. And I was like, all right, this is too good. I was like, hey, man, do you know you're burping right now? He's like, no, I have no, what? I was like, hey, guys. I turned to the whole team. Does he burp a lot? And they're all like, oh, yeah. Like he burps all the time. And I'm like, is it annoying? Yeah, it's super annoying. Right. And so I was like, this is a great example of you don't know what's holding you back. And sometimes you have to ask a mentor, you have to ask people around and say, you know what? I want to be the best version of myself. What's holding me back? And so what's my burp? Am I burping? Am I not? You know what I mean? Like, what is it? Do I stink? Am I saying stuff? Like, what is it? And so that's where you have to be incredibly honest and incredibly vulnerable and be okay with it.
That's I'm surprised no one told him that. You know
Right?
what I mean? Like that's a pretty
Yeah.
overt thing that's going on, especially in a locker room,
Right.
you know? I like that. What's holding you back? And then also you said what emotions are getting in the way. And I don't know, maybe sometimes myself included have a hard time identifying that, right? The emotion. So how do you train the athletes to even get in touch with what emotions are happening in the first place, right? I mean, because I don't know, there's some obvious ones, but there's some less obvious ones. So how do you coach them to identify that in the first place so that they can not let it get in the way, right? I imagine that's the first step. I don't know if that
Yeah.
leads us to the R7 process, but
It does
okay,
actually. It
why
does
don't we
actually.
talk about that?
I would say that everybody, there's no one on the planet, right, that doesn't have something that's holding them back. We all have it and we can't see it, or we can see it and we choose to ignore it. And so this is a great example of the R7 process. So destiny. So step 1, destiny. Step 2, vision. 3 is strategy. 4 is brand. 5 is communicate. 6 is think, which is also can also be pray. And then step 7, take action. And so R7 is part of the Plan to Win curriculum where we're going, okay, we know as a Christian, we know our destiny is to glorify the Lord with our talents and our abilities. Check, right? Vision. What is the vision? Now, this is really hard. I think if anything I do really well, it's I really understand vision and culturally how to create it, how to find it, how to drive it. And so we see here that, vision is a clearly written image of your future. And so, what is that drives us? Now, I want to geek out here just for a second, if I can. So, when we're talking about what, where, when, and how, that's really, really super easy. This is more like a mission statement, right? When we're talking about vision, it's actually in a different part of the brain. It really rests in the amygdala, whereas the what, where, when, and how, and who is more in the neocortex. And so what vision is it takes all the what, where, when, and how and sort of puts it all together and says, fight or flight. Is this good or bad for me? And so as leaders, we're casting vision and people are making the decision whether or not we want to get behind that or not. When we're talking about athletes, it's like, okay, what am I doing big picture to glorify the Lord? And does that include my sport? And how does it include my sport? There's a great example of Bryson DeChambeau and Scotty Scheffler talking about, like, Scotty's like, I just don't like. There's so much bigger than golf. By the way, are you a golfer, Dr. Jeremy? You're not. So
I mean, once every 7 years.
okay, so Scotty's a Christian guy, all right, and he's just like, it's I'm bigger than golf, and he's kind of relaxed about it. And Bryson DeChambeau is just all about golf. Now, I'm not judging these guys on their walk, but Scotty is just much more overt about his walk, and he's more relaxed. And Bryson is not. And I'm actually both fans. I like them both as golfers. And so that relaxed state where you can play free is really where you have less stress and less anxiety about your performance. So who you are is not what you do. And so this is where the identity comes in, and we're crafting this vision, sort of laying it out there on what I actually want to accomplish, which is super hard. And then from the strategy, we're building, from the vision, we're building out the strategy, and then we're going to talk about what the brand is and how we communicate it. So a lot of times we just go, right? So R7 sort of slows us down and allows us to really think through these phases. We know life is messy and it's not as clean as this, but it's a starting point.
Maybe you'll talk about high school and collegiate athletes a little bit. And I feel like there's different maybe phases of the game, whereas the mindset going in, right? And then you have, I know somewhere on your site you have like a Mike Tyson quote. Then you get punched in the face, and then
Yeah.
you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And then after What's some of the mindset going in? Like, how do you talk to athletes about going into the competition from a mindset perspective?
Yeah, this is an awesome, awesome question. And it takes a little bit of explaining. And so I would say that most athletes think that mental preparation is putting in your headphones and listening to music and being relaxed, right? That's their prep. And so I would say that that's a very, very small percentage of your prep. So when you're planning to win, it means you have a plan. And this is where the Mike Tyson quote comes in, because it's like, Mike Tyson in a quote, that's kind of hilarious in itself. But
I don't know. Did Mike Tyson? I mean, I don't know if is he always gets attributed to saying everyone has a plan everyone has a plan
they
to
get
take a
punched.
punch in the face.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that's attributed to him. I don't know if someone else said it before him, but yeah, I know what you
Yeah.
mean.
So the I think what the beauty of that statement is, you're going to get punched in the face. Things are not going to go your way. And so that's the plan, right? That you have to have a plan for when it doesn't go your way. And you have to be vision oriented, not emotionally oriented towards that. So when it doesn't go your way, you're ready to go. Your body doesn't know the difference, right? When you're talking about reps, it's just the mind controls that. And with athletes, it's interesting that, once you get to, with any sport really, there's a certain point where the skills, they're all the same. Everybody's awesome. So what do you need, right? Everybody's like, everybody in the, always talks about, oh, it's always mental. It's always mental. It is always mental, because you've got to have a plan for when that valley happens. And this is where the mental toughness tools get applied.
Talk about the mental toughness tools a little bit.
Yeah, there's lots of them. I have about 10 to 12 that are my go-to. One of them is called the reload. So when we reload, we relax, we release, and we refocus. So in the hockey space, I guess you could use this as football too, but in hockey, we skate for 45 seconds to a minute, and then we go sit on the bench for 4 minutes, because there's other shifts that are happening. So when you're sitting on the bench, you have time to reflect. Like, this is built into the game. It's so easy to do. So just like life, we talked about earlier, peaks and valleys, we have our vision of where we want to go. And so a shift when you're out there probably didn't go your way. So what do? You reload, you relax. So when you relax, you breathe, right? You want to breathe, deep breathe. Psychological sigh is really awesome. So we're breathing in through our nose, out through our mouth, and a double breath. So psychological sigh looks like this. It's been known in a couple of those, right? This isn't deep, extensive breath work here, but the example of it, we know that lowers your somatic and your cognitive anxiety when you're breathing. When you have shadow breath, it increases your anxiety. So, which leads to another sort of tool, is that we know that stress, you can't eliminate it, and anxiety, you can't eliminate it, you manage it. So the shift doesn't go bad, we go back to the bench, we reload, relax, we breathe, we release, we let go of the last play. Whatever happened, just let go, right? You can't hold that into the next shift. With golfers, can't hold that into the next shot. Football, can't hold that into the next play. You got to let go. You got to be in the moment. Every single sports psychology journal for peak performance says that the top athletes are able to be in the moment. So relax, release, refocus. So what are we refocusing on? Refocusing on our vision of where we're going. So, and I sort of drive that down, especially with hockey players, to offensive zone, defensive zone, center ice. So in their offensive zone, if we're battling for wall pucks, like I want to battle, I want to win the battle, right? So battle, battle, battle. That could be my vision. In the defensive zone, we may want to clear the puck. So we clear the puck. When we're shooting, we're not shooting, we're scoring, right? So we're visualizing the red post, the net, the ice, how cold it is, the fans. And so visualization, speaking words of affirmation over yourself, right? When we think about things, usually 2/3 of our thoughts are negative. When we're talking about things, usually our mindset is positive. So we want to talk. So those are just 3 right there.
I love it. I could see that playing out. And thanks for explaining that. And the breath thing, I always forget that, right? I don't know if I've heard of that, the psychological.
Sigh.
So yeah, I mean, I've heard of box breathing, and when people told me about it, I started practicing it, and then I forget about it. So thanks for the reminder. And then I had Wim Hof on the podcast. People should
Wim Hof,
check that episode out. He talks about breathing, and so I appreciate that reminder of the psychological side. But I like how you kind of explained it, because I could see it in play for sports or entrepreneurs or whatever it is. And I like the end part, which is kind of like just that visualization, that vision of what's the end result that someone wants, right? It's not shooting, it's scoring, right? And but it starts with kind of just taking a breath, because it's easy to get caught up in those moments.
And carry those moments into the next shift, into the next shot, into the next play. That's where it all builds. The stress builds to the point you've had enough. I don't know if you watched the Ryder Cup this past weekend, but it was spectacular. Rory McIlroy was like, he was the epitome of this. Is like, he just allowed the crowd to get to him to the point where he turns around and says, "Shut the F up." It's like, you know what I mean? He had lost his stuff and he went low EI. And so like, it happens to us all. If we're not mindful of it, then it allows us to control us, not the vision, the emotion. And so we've all been around people in our lives where the emotion controls us, and they're not fun to be around when that happens.
Dr. Dave, you have some really cool stuff in your background. You talked about the toolbox there. Can you just point out some of the stuff that we see behind you, actually? And
Sure.
for people listening to the audio, he'll describe it, but it's kind of a cool setup, and I'm sure all of it has a specific meaning. So
It does.
can you talk about that?
Yeah. So the red book right here, this is my first book that I wrote. It's just kind of a pastor's guide to reaching the most amount of people for the least amount of money. Over here, these are my books my favorite books that I've read on the sports psychology side of things.
Which one's that?
This right here, that one. And then
I can't read it from where I'm at. So
the power of full engagement by Jim Lair and Tony Schwartz. Awesome book. Flow in sports. What does flow mean? So like, where clear the mechanism, like what does that look like? So it's an awesome book on how to do that. And then I've got my MTT, my mental toughness journal that most of the players I work with. This is like the gospel for hockey players. This is so thorough and so awesome, man. I've won so many championships and divisions, playoffs with athletes using this. Amazing. Yeah, and then I've got my these are some of the tools. That's the time clock. This is the reload, and this is one of the best. Aaron Donald, one of the best talkers in the NFL. We're talking about words of affirmation over yourself. I've got an awesome clip of Aaron Donald, like just talking himself up and getting in the zone. And at his peak, you do not want to be in front of Aaron Donald. I don't know if you remember watching him, but and then this is the Vision Wins book that I wrote a couple years ago, and then the R7. These are all the sports journals. I read one sports journal a week for about 4 years. Those are all the journals on that side, and that's my Amazon Good logo up there. And then I'll turn the computer. This is the I Stand for Israel poster that my agency created that I'm super proud of. So we're part of raising the brand perception of Israel right now, which is really cool.
What's the organization?
This is the International Fellowship of Christian Jews, who have made a significant investment in raising the brand perception of Israel. Yeah. Just pretty cool. I'm really proud to be part of that team. And
Yeah,
then
I
this
had
is Stormy.
I love that. I had Paul Bingham on the podcast, who
Okay.
I don't know if this is the case, but he's raised billions of dollars from Christian organizations to the state of Israel. I don't know if it's the most. Well, it's through direct mail.
Okay.
So you guys should meet at some point.
I would love
But
that.
he told some really amazing stories. But yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to be part of that team, see what happens the next couple of years.
Do you get flack for that, having that in the background?
I do not. No. And I don't care if I do. Yeah. You think I should?
No, but I mean, it's not like a well-liked country around the world, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Not definitely not a popular message right now. But the Bible's pretty
Do I
clear.
think you should? No, I do not think you should
Yeah, I
get
didn't
flack
think I
for it.
should.
But
Yeah.
I actually did a top Israel leader series on the podcast,
Okay.
and had some of the top leaders and business owners talk about. And again, we were talking about business, but through the times that we live in, some of them halfway through had to go into a bomb shelter because there were rockets, spraying overhead. So, and that's normal for them, and they just come back like it's nothing. I'm like, yeah, that was just a rocket. I'm like, seriously? Like if that happened in the US, everyone would be freaking out, right? And that's just a normal, almost daily occurrence for some of them. And some of the people have to endure just to run their business, is pretty crazy.
We have about 6 clients right now that are in Israel that we help with the education awareness of raising the brand perception of Israel. Like, I just think that there's a huge opportunity for Christians to understand how important Israel is from God's perspective. Not that I know God's perspective, but I do read the Bible. And so it's pretty clear that God loves Jews and God loves the Jewish land. Like, it's his chosen people. And so we as Christians need to support Israel. So I know there's all kinds of different theories around why we shouldn't, but it's not my theory. It's not what I subscribe to. So
yeah, no, Eitan, I'll put the link in the show notes. He talks about the art of brand building, and he launched Gmail across Africa, but he also has this "I'm That Jew" campaign that he ran, and it's pretty cool.
I would love to.
He's a big advocate, obviously. So no, thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then over there, on the other side.
On the other side here?
No, the other one.
Yeah. So this is
the mascot. You have a big.
Oh yeah, sorry. This is Stormy. So that's Stormy. He's the mascot for the Carolina Hurricanes. So
love it.
Not really affiliated with them other than working with some players there, but my family's been Hurricane fans for many years.
I love the background. I wanted to ask one last question. Sure. Dr. Dave, first of all, thank you. Thanks for sharing your journey, your knowledge, and it's been really instrumental, I think, as far as a lot of people using these tools. So I encourage people to check out misgood.com, and you can see all the stuff they do. They do obviously have an agency. They have consulting. He has consulting services. He's got books. He's got actually blogs. He's got podcasts as well. Mm-hmm. Who are some of your mentors in some of the great lessons or advice you learned from them?
Man, I've had so many over the years, and I'm so thankful for them. I learned early on that a friend is going to tell you what you want to hear. A mentor is going to tell you what you need to hear. And so I really appreciate them. I've got spiritual mentors. I would say spiritual Christian mentors, and then I've got business mentors. One of my favorite mentors who sold his e-commerce business for a lot of money. I think that, from a marketing perspective, I would say that if you're struggling with your product, I would say allow your what your perceived audience, just be open to what they want out of your product and be able to pivot and change. It's one thing I learned very quickly from my mentor, Joe Schmidt, is that, you've got to really be sensitive to the market and what it's telling you. And this is where the flap comes in again, if you're less anger pride, because you got to be able to let go whatever you've created and be agile.
Yeah, I think it's important. It's just there's a coachability and there's a humbleness to experiencing some of these things, emotions, thoughts, feelings, and letting people help. And looking back, that's the biggest compliment. I didn't realize at the time, but some of my coaches playing sports would say, Jeremy, you're so coachable. And I didn't, that to me now looking back, I'm like, that's probably the best compliment I could have gotten. Right.
Yeah.
So no, I appreciate you sharing those tools. I encourage everyone to check out Emma's Good, check out more episodes of the podcast. And we'll see everyone next time. Dr. Dave, thanks so much.
Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.